gonna be a little something more. I've got a plan in mind, a special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day. It's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or to be told. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day.
Hello, my friends. Happy Tuesday. I am so glad to be back with you again this week. So excited for my guest today. And I will just preface this by saying it is Tuesday, but it's a Tuesday that feels like Friday to me. And I feel like the last 2 days have just been really long, really exhausting. So if I look like I am a little under my normal energy level, that is why. My guest tonight is coming from across the pond where it is ridiculously late. It is midnight her time. And I'm just so grateful, Pippa, that you are willing to stay up this late to come chat with us. So thank you for being here. And for those of you who don't know my friend Pippa, Pippa Haywood is an intuitive spiritual coach helping people around the world know themselves at a deeper level, heal, grow, transform, live in a more aligned way, and manifest their dream life. Her goal is to raise the vibrational energy of the world by helping wonderful people to see and use their full potential. She lives in the south of England with her daughter and her dog, Norman. And I will just say that Pippa was part of my very first journaling group way back a couple of years ago now. She was in my world, and then all of a sudden she was very much in my world. And I'm so glad that you are. So Pippa, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And yes, it is so late. It's tomorrow. But yeah, so hopefully I'm switched on enough to be able to participate properly. Yeah, thank you so
beautiful.
much, Amanda.
So for those of you who are tuning in, if you would drop us a comment, let us know that you're here. We'd love to pull you into the conversation. We'd love it if you'd ask, if you have questions, if you feel comfortable asking them. But I really want to start, Pippa, by talking about you and who you are. So where does your story start? What do we need to know about you?
Well, I suppose my story starts with, well, like all of us, I was born, but I was born into quite what I have since learned is an unusual family situation. My family are very spiritual, so I grew up in this kind of spiritual environment, you know, talking about energies and talking about spiritual healing and talking about spirits and clairvoyance and tarot reading. That was part of my, you know, that was like my dinner time conversation. You know, you sat around the table, these are the kind of things that you're talking about. And so because this is a world that I have been immersed in my whole life, when I kind of started talking about it to other people, I realized that actually this was stuff that wasn't, you know, it wasn't kind of commonly spoken about among everybody. And so that did two things. It gave me a love of supporting people through their own spiritual journeys. It gave me a love of doing that and a love of sharing what little knowledge, because quite frankly, this is a huge topic and we're all learning all the time. You know, my spiritual journey is always evolving. I'm always learning from everybody. but it gave me a love of sharing what I already know. But it also ended up making me feel like a bit of an oddball, kind of, I wasn't necessarily welcomed in a lot of circles. And so I actually began to have sort of two separate parts to my identity: the spiritual side of me, which I kept quite confined to people who I know would accept that and be open to that. And then this kind of other version of me that didn't speak about that and felt very like I shouldn't speak about it, because that was also part of my upbringing, was, oh, don't talk about that at school, or because they obviously didn't want me to kind of be judged from that. So so I kind of ended up having this branch. And then kind of fast forward to maybe 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when I discovered LinkedIn, and I actually discovered Rob Gilbert, the coach, and I had a chat with him, and he kind of immediately kind of drilled down to this idea that I was in effect acting like two different people. And so during the course of that conversation, I realized that I needed to pull that together and actually begin being a coach for real, rather than just helping people who happen to come across me. I started actually doing it as my job.
That's amazing. So I'm just imagining what it was like for little Pippa, who, lived one way at home and then at school, like, couldn't talk about these things. What did that do to you, for you? Like, what was that like?
Well, I've always spoken about it with my close friends. And so I think for me, it meant that I've always had, my close friends were really close. And I didn't necessarily have a wide circle. Like, when people talk about, oh, I've got, friends.
Yeah.
For me, it was always kind of 2 or 3 close friends who I felt really knew me. That always seemed to be, I would describe myself as being like an introverted extrovert. so that kind of works for me anyway, having a kind of small, well, it always used to, I think I'm changing. It always used to work for me. But yeah, I think with hindsight, I think I've always suffered with throat problems, and always had sort of difficulty expressing myself. It being sort of expressing my truth, speaking up for myself. And I think that that's probably a knock-on effect from that, because since I've started feeling comfortable with who I am, and with really sharing that aspect of myself, not only with the people around me, but with the world, essentially, those kind of symptoms are going, which makes sense. The throat chakra, our center of communication, it all makes sense. So yeah, I think that's kind of the physical effect it had, well, and the psychological effect as well.
Yeah. So when you finally decided to kind of integrate this part of you and really live this way and share it, what went through your mind? What was that like?
Absolute fear at first, because that's what always held me back. And I think from a spiritual point of view as well, I think that many of us carry these issues from our past lives as well. I quite often refer to it as being like the witch wound. I think it's quite a common way of expressing it, because we have an innate fear in our DNA, in our memories, because our memories, we carry memories, we can't access them always very easily, but we carry memories of all of the people that we've ever been, all of our past lives, our whole soul memories. And for so many of us, we carry that memory of, actually, it needs to be a secret because it's a matter of life or death if people find out that you do all these myriad things that could potentially get you tortured or burnt at the stake or whatever in the witch hunting times.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. And I think so many people struggle with that. I think there's so many people who have that innate fear, not just necessarily about talking about spiritual things, but expressing themselves generally, because they have that fear that's embedded in them from way back.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. So I want to shift a little bit in your story to this evolution of you being the magic coach. And I love that tagline that you use. So what does that mean? How do you help people? What do you do?
Oh, it really varies. This is one of the reasons I struggle with my marketing sometimes, because it really varies according to what people need. But on the whole, I help people with I use inner journeys. That's kind of the main focus of my work. Is I support people on these inner journeys, which are journeys either deep into your subconscious or journeys into your superconscious. So if we think about ourselves as being kind of made up of these three aspects creating the whole, we have the kind of superconscious. This is the bit of us that's attached all the time to the universe or to God, whatever, insert word here, I always like to say, for whatever your preference is. Then we have like our physical self, which is our memories and our physical bodies, and our ego, the one that we would call me. And then we have, I've got them muddled, sorry, it's late. And then our subconscious, which is our deep memories. There we go. Sorry, I got one muddled on the way. Yeah, that's our deep memories, and what we would often refer to as our inner child. But our inner child is part of that. Does that make sense in the end? Sorry.
Yeah, no. That makes total sense. So on these inner journeys, let me walk that back. When people come to you, how do they know what to ask for? Or how do you know what they need? What is this like?
Well, quite often I get a feeling. Vague and woolly. I get a feeling. I am quite intuitive, and so I will quite often know before almost as soon as somebody pops into my inbox. I'm like, okay, I think I know what's going to be right for you. And so then I will tend to, once we've had sort of a bit of to and froing, we've had a bit of a chat. They've told me the situation. They've told me kind of where they are now, where they would like to be. And I will usually make a suggestion of a couple of different things that I think are going along the right lines. So yeah, that's usually how it goes. Sometimes people know exactly what they've kind of read. They might have read a post I've done or read something that I've done, and they're like, oh yeah, I want that. And so then obviously that's how it goes.
Yeah, and you do so many things. You've got this really big toolbox. I imagine your spiritual toolbox, like very shiny. I imagine it with lots of glitter in it. But what do you mind sharing some of those tools in your toolbox?
Mm. Yes. So I believe ritual is really important, and ritual can encompass anything. We all actually have rituals in our lives, whether we think that we do or not. We've all got them, even if it's um, making our first cup of coffee of the morning or something, or opening the curtains and looking at, we all have these little rituals. We just might not know that we do them. And so helping people to incorporate ritual into their lives is something that I do. But I also work with I'm not a herbalist, but I do work with herbs, and I'm sometimes guided to help people with that. In some ways, I might suddenly get an inkling to tell somebody about a particular herb, and it's usually, it usually is exactly what they need for whatever reason. I also work with essential oils. Again, I'm not qualified in working with essential oils, but I have been using them kind of my whole life. So I know quite a bit. I'm always learning, always learning. But yeah, so I use those. I also work with energies, so the chakras in our bodies, and I work with the energies of the earth, because that's how we're linked to the energies of the earth as well. I've lost where I am. Sorry. Yeah, and I sometimes do. I sometimes channel. I say sometimes. I think in reality, I probably do it more often than I think I do. But I kind of get messages, not necessarily from people who have passed or animals who have passed. There are lots of specialists who do exactly that. But for me, it's more, they don't tend to be that exact. It tends to be like a contact with somebody's higher self, with their kind of super conscious. That tends to be more the contact and the channel that opens for me.
That is so cool. So I'm imagining, as you were saying that, again, this toolbox, Pippa's spiritual toolbox, and it's very, very shiny. It's getting shinier the more tools you talk about having. And I'm so impressed and in awe that when people come to you, you were able to often intuitively just know what they need. Like, that's a whole lot of stuff to pull from, which is very, very cool.
Oh, thank you. It is, yeah, it's really lovely, and it's really lovely. I feel very honored and grateful to be able to do that, because it's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing to do. I'm essentially helping people connect with that part of themselves, really. And that's the thing I quite often say to people: I'm not really doing very much. It's the person that I'm working with. They're the one doing the work. I'm just kind of, I don't know, giving them a little shove, I guess.
Oh, there's so much magic in what you do. And one of the things I'm hearing that you didn't say, but really is like holding space for folks, helping give direction, and then really holding space so they can go do this work. So some time ago, probably a year ago, I did an animal guide inner journey with you, which was really cool. And I remember I was in my office. It was like a lunchtime for me thing. So I was like, not in a place where I normally allow myself to get super relaxed, but was able to, make myself comfortable. And you just used your words to help me on this journey to imagine where I am. And what I remember being really significant was you didn't tell me where to go. That you said, well, imagine that you're in was it a forest or a path or something? And I got to imagine it. I got to journey there myself. And it looked exactly like I needed it to look. You weren't saying, imagine there are pine trees and there's, a squirrel and there are all of these things. You just gave me the tools to be able to step into this space that you held so beautifully for me. And I love what you said in your introduction to it, which is that whatever comes up for you is the right thing, that there's no way to do it wrong. It was such a comfort to me because I come from such a different background than you, where we didn't talk about things like this. And spirituality wasn't really a thing. My mom went to church with her side of the family, and my dad's side of the family were non-practicing of another denomination. So we just kind of did nothing. So I found my way slowly, and I'm not even going to say surely, gingerly. I'm going to say gingerly. And anything that was akin to something that was at least spiritual adjacent, something like meditation, right? Which is a tool that we can use along those lines. I always felt like I would do it wrong because every time I went to a meditation thing, I would fall asleep on my mat. And I'm like, oh, well, I can't even meditate right. My brain is going a mile a minute and I'm ended up, snoring on my mat. Like maybe it's not even worth it. But just hearing you say, like, however this works for you, works for you. I remember you saying, if maybe you will see this, right? Maybe you will imagine and actually see yourself where you are, or maybe it's just a feeling. And either way, or even if it's something else, it's exactly the right thing. And you just have this beautiful way of making me feel comfortable. So I imagine you do the same for all of your clients, just really helping folks feel comfortable exploring.
Oh, thank you. That's exactly what I try to do. So thank you. That's lovely to hear. And yeah, I think it's really important for people to know that they can't do it wrong. This is all about exploring yourself. It's about getting to know yourself at a deeper level. So really, how can anybody else tell you that you're doing it wrong? That's always I've always found. Oh, it's very easy, and it's a struggle for me as well as it's a struggle for everybody to quiet that ego down. But I think you quite often get that in spiritual communities where people accidentally let the ego come in a bit too much and want people to do it in exactly this way, when actually, or want to try and keep things secret, holding back. And I think that does the same thing. It ends up coming across as ego. And don't get me wrong, I haven't perfected that. I'm a work in progress. I always say I'm a work in progress, but I am aware, and I think that that's the first step on these things. But yeah, I think it's really important for people to be able to explore, and really important for people to know that really there's such a fine line between our intuition. So we're pulling this from the universe. It's such a fine line between that and our imagination. People tend to think there's this really wide gap, that imagination is something that I'm making up, but intuition is something that I'm somehow pulling from the ether. But actually, those two things are essentially the same. It's our imagination, our creativity is that is often our connection with the universe or spirit or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, that gave me goosebumps. I absolutely love that. So, can you walk us through? I know we're not going to do an inner journey, but can you kind of walk us through how you prepare people for an inner journey and what to expect?
Yeah, of course. Oh, so sorry, my mind's gone blank again. Yeah, so initially, it's really important to be in a relaxed state, but I also tend to go through the kind of pattern of explaining to people what an inner journey is what it's going to be like in a way. So I would start by explaining that we all take inner journeys of a sort all the time, every day. Every time we imagine something from our past, every time we or every time we relive something from our past, every time we imagine something in our future, that's a form of inner journey. It's kind of going, it's going to that place or going to that memory or and all we do on an inner journey is make it more conscious and more goal oriented and more intuitive. So it's nothing, it's nothing to be scared of. It's nothing to be worried about. It's, it's something that actually is very normal and that we automatically do anyway. And another thing that I will always explain, as you said, I explained when we did the spirit animal inner journey, it will happen for you exactly as it's meant to. Different people experience them in different ways. I always want to, I for some reason, I can't remember the name of it, but there are a whole section of people who cannot visualize. So, and it's called something, but I'm frustrated with myself for not knowing what it's called. But so, for example, for those people, they can do an inner journey, but they won't see it. They will experience it in different ways. So it might be other senses. They might hear it, like listening to an audiobook. It might be that kind of experience, or it might be more experienced as sensations, feelings, rather than physical sensations. But sometimes it's physical sensations too. Other people get kind of snapshot images, like you're flicking through photos. It might be like that, or like an old movie. Somebody I was working with the other day said that theirs was totally like sepia, kind of like a really old black and white movie and kind of flickery, which I thought that was quite cool. But yeah, people experience them in totally different ways, and however it looks is exactly right for them. It's exactly as it's meant to be. Then what do I do? Then I then I will talk a little bit about how we have different parts to ourselves. So we have some people refer to it as like left and right brain, but we have this part of us that is creative and spiritual and intuitive and connected. And we have the other kind of logical. This is kind of it's sort of related to divine feminine and divine masculine. So we have the other side of us that is more logical and linear and rational, and quite frankly, that part of us is very much used to ruling the roost. That's the world that we live in. That's the bit that gets the attention and the respect more often than not. And so that part of us is very much used to ruling the roost. And so when we start using that intuitive, creative, imaginative side of ourselves, the other side kind of doesn't always like it, kind of interrupts a little. It shows up as that little voice telling you that you're making it up, that it's all in your imagination. Like that's a bad thing. And so I explain to people that it's okay. That it's okay that is what that is. And so you can kind of manage. There are ways to help you manage that, so as it doesn't detract from what you're trying to do on the journey. So I explained that what you can do is you can simply agree with it. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I am making it up. Isn't it wonderful? Let's enjoy it. And you can also keep that part busy by giving it the job to do of remembering it as you go in that lovely linear logical fashion. Or some people, it even works to write, to journal essentially as they go. If that part is very noisy, that's a good way to sort of keep it busy and quiet sometimes. I explain to people that if they kind of if their journey deviates from what I'm saying, if it goes totally off piste, and they kind of zone out from what I'm saying and get a totally different experience, that's absolutely fine. Kind of however it goes is absolutely fine, because it's obviously what you're meant to do. And sometimes when, particularly if you're super conscious, if your higher self is desperately trying to give you a message, it will take any opportunity it gets to give you that message. And so once you get into that super relaxed state, it might be like, this is this is what you need. Really make sure that you get the message at that opportunity. And so that might mean that you don't even end up hearing a word that I say during the session, but you still get exactly what you needed. So that's how I generally start, by explaining that. And then we will do generally bits of breath work or other relaxation techniques to slow down and to really get into that receptive zone. It's similar to hypnosis. It's taking you to that really deep level of relaxation where you're open.
Yeah. Oh, that's...
Did I answer that okay?
Yeah, you absolutely did. Absolutely. So what kind of problems or situations do people often come to you for? Like, how would somebody know an inner journey is right for them?
Generally speaking, if somebody is having a block with something, by a block, I mean they're trying to do something, and for some reason, it's just not happening for them in the right way. So this could be about a relationship. It could be about communicating with somebody. It could be about moving on from an experience or a relationship or something that's caused them pain in the past. It might be about letting go of that in order to move on to something new. People quite often have issues around being open to receive good things in their life. And so that can show up as money issues or not acting like a magnet to your clients, to your potential clients. It can be these kind of energetic, it's like a series of hurdles or something, it kind of, in my mind, that's how I see it, these series of hurdles that kind of are in people's way, and it's about giving them the tools to jump over them or clear them out the way completely.
Yeah. Oh, so I love it because as you're talking, I'm thinking about like that kind of encompasses everything, right? Like an inner journey could be the answer to like, why am I stuck here? And is there are there certain areas of life where inner journeys are particularly helpful?
Um, if people want change, I suppose. If people want change. So, for example, so I've really wanted to move house for a long time. I've been totally called to move. But it just wasn't happening. Like it was just weird. Like it just was weird. Weird things kept happening. Like weird things kept happening to show me that I no longer needed to live here. Even to the extent that I was having like weird, like things banging on my front door, like at weird times. And I was like, what is this, kids or something? But there's never anybody there when I look. But it's kind of just a general feeling of not feeling welcome in a bizarre kind of way. But yeah, I just knew that this isn't, that where I am right now isn't quite right. But also I knew I've been feeling really cool to move to Glastonbury, which is a really amazing spiritual centre of the world, in fact, but particularly of the UK. But yeah, it just wasn't happening. So I'd find a house and it would kind of vanish away from me. So I was like, okay, I need to do the work that I'm always getting other people to do. I'm always suggesting other people to do. And so for me, that I had some blocks about accepting help from people. And that stemmed from, this is something that's quite interesting, is quite often we tend to think of healing that we need to be around issues that happened long ago in our childhood. Inner child healing, it comes up a lot. And granted, there's there's lots of stuff that we can do with our inner child healing, but also that part of us, like I was saying before, that part of us that encompasses our inner child is all of our memories. So actually the thing that happened last week, the thing that happened last month, the thing that happened a year ago, 3 years ago, whenever in that whole kind of string of time, there's things that we need to heal from there as well. And so I needed to do some work along those lines. And I needed to get rid of my perception about what I was actually looking for. And whatever you call it, whether you call it surrendering, whether you call it being open, whether you call it, what was I saying to somebody the other day? It was really funny. It was expecting the unexpected. No, expecting the unexpected without expectation.
Oh, and that makes so much sense. I was having a conversation with a friend fairly recently who about expectations, and sometimes we go into a situation thinking we have no expectations, but really we just haven't done the work to define our expectations. And we only realize that we had those expectations when they go unmet. And feeling resentful or bitter or disappointed that something didn't go a particular way because we were just, even though we hadn't defined it, expecting something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, and so sometimes it's just about digging that bit deeper and finding out what that is. And so I would use inner journeys for that. People use different methods. The way that I do it isn't the only way by a long stretch. But that's the methods that I would go to. So I did some inner child work. Well, I'm calling it inner child work, but some memory work to heal those issues. And what I literally did was I went into that situation into that memory, if you like, and I rewrote it. I changed the outcome of it because my brain doesn't know any different. If I live through that in a different way, then that's, and this is kind of, it's where the spirituality and psychology kind of merge a little, isn't it? Because when you talk, people in psychology would talk about false memories. Essentially, that's what I did. I planted a false memory in my brain to help it heal from that particular trauma.
It is amazing to have tools that can help us do that. And I love how you said that you did the work using the tools that you help other people with. And that just resonated so deeply, because often when I'm like struggling in my life, why aren't things going quite how I expect or want or whatever? I'm like, oh, maybe I should do what I always tell the people I work with to do, right? To go pick up my pen and find the answers. Because for me, that is how my clarity comes the fastest. And I find my answers with a pen in hand. But I love how there are so many tools in this world to do the healing work, to learn and grow and get to know ourselves better, and get to just make our lives these beautiful, intentional lives that we deserve to have.
Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah, I love that. And I'm so grateful too for you restarting my journaling journey kind of way back when, because that, again, that once I incorporated that into my kind of daily ritual, which I just hadn't done. It was so weird. I used to journal like all the time, and then somehow it slipped away. It just kind of slipped away from being part of my habit. But it's such an amazing tool, and that combined with inner journeys is so powerful. As I always say at the end of my sessions, if you save time to go and journal about this, because it's so important to reflect on what's happened, and to remember it so that you can go back. I keep do you keep journals of what you dream at all?
I don't often remember my dreams or remember them in enough detail to write them down. But when I wake up and there's a dream that is so vivid that I'm like, ooh, like I need to write it down and make sense, then I will.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it funny how sometimes you just know when it's an important one? It's like your brain won't let you forget it. It keeps kind of popping up, and it's like, oh, okay, I have to do some work on that one. What's that mean?
Well, and I love doing inner journeys with you, and then taking the time, as you said, right afterwards to process it and record, because sometimes the answers come quickly, and sometimes the answers come later. And as I take the time to write down what I remember, what came up, what struck me, right, it gives me a touch point that I can go back to check, to like feeling check, to pulse check. That's the word, right? Like, does what I'm feeling now align with how I felt at the beginning of this experience? Does what I'm feeling now align with how I felt when I was done? Is this where I was hoping to get to? Did I find the answers I need? Is this the answer I need? And yeah, they're such beautiful companions.
Yes. Yeah. It's it all works really well together, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my friend, we are coming to the end of our time. So if folks are interested in working with you, how do they find you? Where can they find you?
LinkedIn is my hangout. I'm not really on any other social media, so come find me on LinkedIn, Pippa Haywood, the Magic Coach. Come and say hi in my DMs. And that's where it all starts. That's where it all starts. And and just come say hi, tell me a bit about yourself, and we'll just go from there.
Beautiful. Well, my friend, thank you for being here. Thank you for staying up late to be here with us. Really, really appreciate you, my friend. And we really appreciate you for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. And we will see you next time.